Hey everyone, get ready for a new episode of Inspired, a podcast made to have conversations centered around being designed by God to discover and dwell. Whatever season in life you're in, you will pick up helpful insight, thoughts to think on throughout the week, and leave this episode feeling inspired to know God in deeper ways. I'm Jessica, and I'm on the Inspired team here at X Church, and today I have two new guests with me, and we are going to be talking about something really fun. We are going to do a mini series with the title, My Current Blank and What I'm Doing About It. So today we talk about fear, and we talk about the word fear and everything that it entails, along with really helpful insight to know what to do about fear. There are a few minutes in this podcast where the audio cuts out on my microphone, but stay tuned because I come back in later. Check it out. Welcome back. We're excited that you're here for another episode of our Inspired podcast. Today, I have two special guests with me. Megan and Janice are not here, but I do have Hope on my left, and I have Maria on my right.
Hey.
They are not only people who work at this church, X Church, but they are also friends of mine and friends of our Inspired ministry, and so we're excited to have them here at the table with us. But let me tell you where you might see these two ladies on a Sunday morning. Maria, she's cast in the shadows in the dark back behind the sound booth. So she is like sound extraordinaire. She knows all of the instruments and all the sounds and the buttons and it's like the light up pad that you see glowing.
The spaceship in the back.
The spaceship in the back. Mm-hmm. So Maria is back there most Sundays, Sundays. And then during the week, you work on the creative team. You're a part of that team.
Yeah.
Churning out all these awesome graphics, sounds, movies, lights, all the things. And then Hope, you'll see her on a Sunday morning going around the foyer. She's baptizing people. She's doing next steps. She's integrating people who are wanting to serve. She's our social butterfly, I think. Decorating awesome spaces out there. I mean, like Father's Day, Mother's Day, all the things. And then during the week, you kind of do the same thing. I mean, you were just out here today, like decorating the foyer.
The foyer is my baby, basically. It's
you
so
like
fun.
to create spaces.
So fun.
What do you like about creating spaces?
Oh, gosh.
Because I'm also a fan of creating environments.
I feel like it's so fun to go from idea phase where it's like you just blow up. You're like, oh, what if we did this and this and this? And then you're like, oh, you see it all come together. Like, my favorite moments are when I step back after it's all done, of course. And I'm like, wait, wow, we actually did it.
Yeah,
That's
it was
so
a process.
fun. Yeah, but it's so fun.
I always feel like I get a little frustrated from you say idea phase to like actual. Because
it's a
I'm
process.
Because when my idea phase, I'm like, let's do all this stuff. And then I
it
feel
doesn't
like
happen.
I have people that are like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Or no, that's going to be way too expensive.
Yeah. Such a bummer.
But it is fun problem solving and then finally seeing the final
Well,
product.
you feel like you have a plan. You're like, yeah, this is going to work. This is going to be great. It's going to be so cool. And then you're like, you do it. And you're like, wait, that's not working. Like, that's not hanging right. That is
or
not
like
holding.
tying flowers to fishing line.
I will never do that again.
I
will never
cool, though,
do that
Mother's
again.
Day.
It was so fun. But, yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it's so fun.
Yeah. Well, you do an awesome job at it.
Thank you.
So, Maria, how did you get into like sound engineering and all? Aren't you self-taught?
Ish.
So you also play an instrument.
Yeah. So I played a musical instrument, guitar, bass, plus clarinet and piano.
Yes.
Oh, come
Yeah.
on.
Clarinet.
So yeah, marching band.
Bannard.
So music has always been a huge part of my life, and I wanted to travel and stuff, but the whole band thing, high school stuff, I was like, that's not really me. But I thought audio engineering, that sounds cool. And so I started coming here, and I think my second week here, I was shadowing the sound guy at the time.
You hopped
And
right in.
He was a wizard, and he's gone now. He's touring, and I don't even know what, but he taught me a lot. And then when we launched at the YMCA, that was me. It was kind of throwing me to the wolves, and it was like, figure it out, because it's going to be you. And so I did that. And then through that, I mean, you kind of talked about it, but I do a lot of audio stuff on the creative team. And I mean, I just kind of really fell in love with it. And now that's what I do every single weekend.
So, okay, let me ask you a question. Do a lot of like your TikTok follows, do you follow a lot of like audio engineer hacking, like this is how you create this sound or whatever? Because Trey is like literally always, he's always like scrolling on his TikTok and be like, look what this guy did with his guitar pedal. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. Not as much on TikTok, but a lot on Instagram. Like I get all these, hacks for lack of a better term, and I have them all saved on my, that's all my
So
saves.
what you're saying is if we compared your phone and your phone together with your Instagram follows, it would be the exact same, right?
It would be extremely different.
What do you follow?
Mine is probably like interiors, very home vibes, very like aesthetic. Yeah, like cool graphic things. Well, yours might be some of that too.
Mine is mostly like audio stuff and how to feed your toddler.
Well, mine is not that. Mine might be dogs instead.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Do you follow? Okay, so like, do you follow the rainbow? Oh, I know, was it the rainbow child or like rainbow feeder or something like that on Instagram?
Yeah,
She like talks about like feeding in rainbow colors.
Yes.
Oh, I've heard
Yeah.
of this. Weirdly,
I feel like that
Yeah.
there should be an adult count like that.
yeah,
My kids
for
eat better
us,
than
on
I do.
how adults should eat.
Yeah.
Like I need someone to arrange my food in rainbow order and I'll eat it.
Yeah.
That would be really
Is
fun.
that what it is? It's in rainbow order.
Well,
Well,
no, it just has all the colors of the
yeah.
rainbow.
Got it.
Yeah. It's
Like
it was-
a child's plate that has like red things on it and orange things on it. Like
There's-
eat by
yes.
color.
Yeah. My kids. my
Color
kids
by number.
their food is much more colorful than mine a lot of times. But
Okay, so
Yeah.
you have 2 kids. Tell us a little bit about those 2 little rascals.
oh man. So my oldest is Colton. He's 2.5, and my youngest is Blake. He's 1.5. They're 15 months apart. Do not recommend that. They're best friends sometimes, and worst enemies other times. But yeah, they're the highlight of my life, and they're really fun.
So
I thought I was a little bit sad that I had 2 boys because I wanted a girl, but I'm like, oh, it's so good for them, and they are just.
I know they will be best friends, and like because my 2 older ones are 2 years apart, and I snapped a photo of them like when we were on our vacation. We were swimming at the beach, and I saw them out in the distance, and they literally looked like twins. I mean, because they're now the same height, and just like it was just like this one serene moment that I looked at them. I was like, they really are good friends. I mean, like there's a lot of arguing, but they really are good friends.
That's
Yeah.
so sweet.
And even like with your kids being closer, they're gonna be way more.
They already, because Blake is kind of starting to transition a little out of the baby phase, and he's more starting to get into the trucks and stuff, which is Colton's
Colton's jam.
Oh,
Colton
that's
and his
all we
Jeep.
talk about. Oh yeah, he's just got a Jeep that he drives around the property.
Does he
Oh
have
my
some
gosh.
sunglasses?
He doesn't, but he has a
Cool,
baseball
yeah.
hat, and and we get out and we look at the engine and we make sure there's plenty
Oh
of
my
mud on it.
God.
And
Plenty of mud.
yeah, that's all we talk about. So now that Blake can kind of get into it a little bit, there was a moment today where Blake was holding a toy, and Colton came up to him and was like, "Oh yeah, you see that? That's the tires, and that's the wheels, and that's the hood and windshield." Like just talking to him.
Aw.
I was like, "Oh."
That's
And
so sweet.
then they were pushing each other down and screaming about
Yeah.
5 minutes later. So
When my kids got one of those like little play Jeeps,
Mm-hmm.
they have some torque on them.
yeah,
We put like my little I guess he was under a year. I mean, like could sit up, but
yeah.
strap him in next to Jude, and Jude pushes that go button, and like I literally thought Indy was gonna fall out the side. It was really fun. It was very entertaining for the parents, but I mean, Indy was fine. He was laughing, but
Yeah.
those things can be scary.
They are. Colton hit a tree. He hit a tree a couple times. He talks about it too. He's like, I hit the tree and I gotta be careful. I'm like, yeah, you do.
Or the mom police is going to pull
Yes,
you over and you are
exactly.
going to be suspended from your vehicle.
Yes.
I
That
loved
is
those
hilarious.
things growing up.
I
Those little
know.
Jeeps. Those were. I had a Barbie Jeep.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
That thing
Okay,
was
so
awesome.
tell us a little bit about you. You have a brother, right?
I have a little brother.
Okay.
He is about to be a senior in high school.
Okay.
Which is crazy. I can't believe it. He kind of feels like my kid in a way.
Mm-hmm.
We have like we have an 8-year age gap. So it's like I watched him grow up, all the things. But yeah, I just moved back here from Nashville, Tennessee.
How many questions do you ever, I bet you get a lot. Like, why did you move back here from Nashville?
All the time. They're like, Nashville, why would you come back here?
Right.
But no, it's been such a cool journey. This was actually the church that I was saved in, baptized in, and felt the call to ministry in.
That's awesome.
So it's like a full circle moment. I'm from around the Central Ohio area. Moved away to Cincinnati for school, then moved to Nashville for ministry, and now I'm back here working at X Church, which is so cool. But it's been a journey. Like I said, I was saved here, baptized here 7 whole years ago, which is wild. Well, long before that, but that's when I moved, was 7 years ago. And it's crazy that I now get to walk people through those exact same things,
That is so
like
cool.
day-to-day life.
Yeah.
So it's been so cool. I'm close to family now, which is so sweet.
I know, it makes everything better.
Oh my gosh, it's so sweet. My mom loves it, of course, having me close. And it's just nice to have time with my brother too,
Yeah.
as he's finishing high school. But it's been so cool to be
That's
back.
awesome.
Crazy story. Can't believe it. I literally said, I'll never move back there, ever. That was like my promise to myself.
You know, I said the same thing about moving from Texas to Ohio. Like not about moving to Ohio, but I always swore that I would never move away because I was so close to my parents. I was so close to my husband's parents that it actually was like my biggest fear was to move away. And here I am. But the cool thing is all throughout that process, it was a big process of letting go, but also embracing what's ahead.
Yeah.
And it was super scary. And there were days, there were weeks, and probably months that I just cried almost every day, just because I can remember like dropping family off at the airport, and I would just be so teary all day long.
That is the worst.
It is. And I'm like, I'm up here and they're down there, and I just miss them, and I wish they could be up here. And But I will say that through that process, like, now I can say with 100% confidence that I'm exactly where I need to be.
Yes.
And I'm thriving.
Yeah.
And I love to be able to say that because going from one of my biggest fears to now being on the other side of it, saying like, I'm thriving here, I'm doing what I'm called, and I'm like being super purposeful is really rewarding.
It's so good
to be able to say that.
That's how I felt when I moved to Nashville. It was like obviously so hard to move away from family and friends and whatever, but I grew so much in that time. And now I'm like, okay, well, I'm back. And I feel that way about friends. Like I drop friends off at the airport and I'm like,
when are you coming back? Can you make a date?
Yeah, but it's so true. Like I'm so much better because of those moments of like, I feel like that's when I've been like most desperate for God too, honestly. It's like when you're alone.
Well, because you actually have to depend on something other than yourself because you know the state of yourself right now is not dependable. Yeah. Because you're
not
in
at all.
a puddle on the floor.
Yeah.
So there has to be some other structure, some other framework that we can lean on. And that is, I mean, in our context, in the Christian faith, that is God.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm excited that we've like already started this conversation because about fear, because we're going to be talking about over the next couple of weeks my current like blank and what I'm doing about it. Yeah. And we girls have talked before we came on here, and we're going to talk about my greatest fear and what I'm doing about it. Not to sit here and have this therapy session because nobody really wants to hear us like unpack all of the nitty gritty of fears and like what we're doing, and we're not going to cry. Well, we might cry. That's fine. But I like all of this conversation to have because I feel like the word fear and kind of where we landed on is so embedded in us, and it's in all of us, whether we want to admit it or not. Yeah. And so as we've kind of thought over the last week or so, what is my current fear and what am I doing about it? And so I thought we would just dive into that. I mean, because to be honest, as we've talked, it looks different for all three of us, which is so great because, I mean, we all have different fears, and we probably have, like, I probably still have some fear that you do, and I probably have some fear that you do, but it's not like my top one that I'm dealing with, but it might be one day. And I know this is the cool thing also is that when we talk about these kinds of things, we know that we have people to lean on that have been through the trenches of a fear of something and have lived to tell a tale, and then can in turn act as an encouragement on the other side. Yeah. So with that being said, we're going to start out. We're going to dissect it and talk about the fear first. My current fear. And then we'll talk about what we're doing about it in a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to open it up there. Who wants to go first?
Maria?
Maria first. So I talked about it a little bit, but I have 2 really small children. And this season of life, I've found myself as a single mom, which is not something that I anticipated. But with that comes a whole bunch of fears. And being a mom in general, you're going to have fears.
Yeah.
Because, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
they keep me up at night. It's like, okay, where are they going to go to school? Where are they going to go to school? Or should we move to a different school district? What if they don't make friends? What if they, it's endless. And how will I handle this? And it's so scary. But the right now biggest fear that I have is, so my kids they were basically babies when their dad and I split. And so with that they have no idea what's going on. They have no idea. They don't even remember that we ever were all a family together. So it's been normal for them to, okay, today I'm going to daddy's house. And
which is kind of nice in its own little way.
it is.
Yeah.
It is nice. And it's something that I have had to learn to appreciate, the little bit of time that I have alone. And so every couple days they go with their dad. And I've been very grateful. Their dad is stable and he is a great dad. He loves them. They are safe with him. And I know that is not the situation for a lot of people. And so I know that's scary, but I have been blessed in that.
Yeah.
But one thing that I can't help is being a mom. You know what it's like when you're sick, you want your mom. When you have a bad dream, you want your mom. When you fall down, you want your mom. And so to think that those things are going to happen to them and I'm not there for what, and for them, they don't know that I'm not there. They could think that it's a choice that, mommy doesn't want to be here. Oh, mommy doesn't want to come with us. Or mommy can't do that. Or she, they don't understand that it's our situation. And so I worry that they think that, Blake, my youngest, he still wakes up a lot in the night. His sleep has been a little all over the place. And I worry because I know when he's with me, he cries for me specifically. And so he's looking for me in the middle of the night.
It probably almost pains you to think like he would call out mom.
Right.
And you're not the one that comes and gets
exactly.
him.
And so what does that do in your little 18-month-old mind?
Yeah.
And so it is my fear that that these are planting seeds in their minds. So when they are 15, they're think, that those things, even though they can't remember, that's that feeling of my mom's not there when I need her, or when I desperately needed my mom, or when I really wanted my mom and I was sick or whatever, she wasn't there for me. And so that's been my big fear lately.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And like you said, I know that I can think on, a one hand of other women who are in the exact same boat, but might not feel like their kids are safe at the other person's house. Yeah. Or, even if it's not a partner, it's a guardian.
Right.
And in I think that where the fear creeps in is that even though that we know that they could be safe, that they will be safe and that they could be safe, it's also like a level of letting go of control, because you're not able to control the environment and the situation that they're in. And so if they're not going to do it like you, they're not going to act like you, they're not going to have the same solutions as you. So it can become like a control thing too.
Yeah. I think all moms are a little bit of a control freak. And so when you have to pass them off, and some people, I know it's for a week at a time that they're not with their kid, and they don't know what's being said to their kids. They don't know, and it's opposite of what they have when they're with you. Yeah. And so I can't even imagine. And that's also a fear, down the road, what's this going to turn into? Right. But I think in the right now, I know I've been blessed that I know that they're well cared for. Yeah. And they're too young to really understand. But I can imagine. It's just, it takes a whole different level of trusting God when you're trusting him with your kids and you have zero control. Yeah. That is I told God, I'm like, I got to be a quick learner in this one because I hope that this lesson doesn't take long. Because it's terrifying.
It is. And I feel like what you said about like kind of along the lines of releasing control. I feel like for me as a mom, I think we're going to deal with that our whole life.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter what circumstance we find ourselves in. We can be single, we can be married, we can like have young kids, we can have old kids. There's always this level of control that we're going to have to surrender.
Yeah.
And because I remember specifically like rocking Jude, my 11-year-old, when he was like a baby. And I mean, he was probably a few weeks after he was born, and having the thought, and I really do believe like this was just a thought embedded in my mind from the Holy Spirit that was like, that told me, so he's here now, and this from now on will be a process of letting go and like slowly undoing your cords and your control on him and giving him to me.
Wow.
Because he's my kid.
Yeah.
And I've entrusted you with him.
Wow.
And so I'm going to walk you through that step by step. And it's a slow process. But I remember thinking, oh my gosh, you're right. Like that he's not, God loves him more than I love him. And sometimes I don't see how that is even possible. But a lot of it has to do with control and the area of control. And I feel like I deal with the fear of that because it's out of my control.
Yeah. And I don't know that it ever fully goes away. That just, because you love your kids so much and you think, I know what's best for them. I have it all figured out. If you just follow my plan, it will be fine. And that is, I mean, God recently has just been really drilling that into my head that, no, these are my kids.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I need to, because I trust God with my life. And so I know that I can trust him with my kids' life.
Yeah.
But it's a process.
Wow.
That's so good.
Wow. Man, I don't have kids, but I'm like, oh gosh, a lot to look forward to.
No, it's fun. Don't ever like. It always
know.
like crushes me when people are like, oh,
the good outweighs the bad.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so sweet. Though.
Okay, so you don't have kids,
No.
so your fear has nothing to do with kids.
Nothing to do with kids. No. No, I feel like I have a whole list of fears.
I know. When
honestly.
I was thinking this, I was
I'm like, there's a lot of things I could say. But no, I feel like in this season, obviously I mentioned I just moved back and I've been away doing ministry for a long time now. And
tell us what you did.
So I worked in women's ministry, ironically.
Okay.
I started a chapter of, it's called Delight Ministries. It's a women's college ministry. I started that on my campus when I was in college and then went on full-time with them moving forward until I came here. And it was so fun, seriously so fun. I love being in ministry so much, but I feel like my biggest fear right now is that because I am in ministry, I have a bit of a strong personality, just a little bit. Yeah, I have a big personality and I'm just bold, that it will lead to singleness forever for me. Yeah, the singleness word, yikes. Which honestly, it's like scary to even say that. I think there's fear rooted in that. But this all got brought up because the other day I was like talking to a girl helping me hang stuff in the foyer. And we were just talking about relationships. And I was like, yeah, I'm fine with not being married. Like I just straight up said that. And then it took me like 2 minutes. I turned to her. I was like, hold on a minute. That's not true, actually. I was like, I think I just said that out of fear. And it's like, I put up this wall of like, no, I don't even want it. But that's all out of fear. And I think to your point about control, I'm trying to control my own emotions and control my own situation by putting that wall up. And I think a lot of it has to do with things that I've been told about myself.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times, so like your issue, I feel like I identify with your issue in the area of fear based out of control. But I feel like what you're saying is some of my fear has a lot to do with what I was told and what I was named.
Yeah. Exactly.
In my childhood, my upbringing, or really not like anybody or not anything that anybody's ever said to me, but things that I started thinking about myself.
Yeah, exactly.
That weren't true.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like, you hear all the time, like your husband should be the one that leads you, right? But I'm like, how is that even possible?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm such a strong leader, just naturally. It's like I'm low-key bossy.
I'm just like laughing because like when you said like you just hear your husband is supposed to lead you, I feel like that is 100% on the mark. Like my upbringing with Christianity.
Yeah, it's like find someone that can lead you. I'm like,
literally, okay, so Trey leads worship, and I literally thought that what that looks like is like, we're going to do Bible studies all the time, and we're going to sing worship songs together.
Yeah,
with his
sweet,
guitar.
precious.
It is so funny.
Oh, you guys don't do that?
Oh, yeah, we do. Every 2 nights.
You have
all right,
routine.
yes, worship time.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying that is that it's so true that like what we're told as kids or teenagers can negatively shape the way that we see our future. Because like for me, I was just asking like, well, so, and I find myself, I'm not like, I might not be like as like out front and blunt as you are. We are probably both in our own ways, and you as well.
Yeah.
But I feel like it was an effort to like take the women down a few notches.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I don't agree with like the like men can carry the mantle of responsibility of spirituality in their house. I think that there's a lot to be said about that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what I found was I was waiting for all that stuff to happen.
Yeah.
And I was just like going to be like quiet and submissive and blah, blah, blah. And really what happened was I was stunting my own growth. Because I wasn't stepping into a role that had been described to me before.
Yes.
Because it wasn't described to me that a woman can be like use their words for life. It wasn't described to me that I could be on a platform and communicate. It wasn't described to me that I could also help lead equally in the relationship or teach my kids equally in a family setting. And I think that shapes so much of how I thought my personality needed to be.
Totally. I feel the same way. I feel like, honestly, it all boils down to the intimidation factor. It's like, I'm fearful that I am too intimidating.
Yeah.
And that's why I haven't had a relationship in a while. Or that's why, like, nothing's working out. Or it's like they see me, I'm in ministry, so that's, like, strike number 1. Like, yikes, that's a little scary.
Oh, like, I can't be as spiritual as her.
Yeah, which is so not true.
Right.
Like,
oh, absolutely. Like, because the
At
way that
all.
we see ourselves is, like, I am not, like,
Yeah.
I do not have it all together. Please
No,
do not think that.
literally.
I might look like I do, but I do not.
I say that all the time. I'm like, on the outside, maybe it looks like it, but I definitely do not at all. So it's like, ministry. And then, you know, you talk to me one time and you're like, whoa, big personality. And then you talk to me a little bit more and you're like, whoa, she's really bold and blunt. And it's like, to me, that's like 3 strikes. Like, nope, they're going to see those 3 things. It's too intimidating. I'm out. And I think that is what leads me to the fear of, okay, well then no one will be okay with it. Like there will be no one.
I think what's funny is because I've had a lot of conversations with people saying the same thing. And I feel like all my female friends are all like, oh, you are such a catch. Like, and you know, and everyone's like, yes. Yeah. Because they know you. But then to a guy who doesn't know you very well, it's like, oh, I cannot handle
scary.
that. And not that you're not great and perfect, but it's just, God, I don't know. It does seem, I don't know why it seems scary, but I think it really does. I think too, a woman seeing a guy that is that confident and strong in ministry, it's like, oh, that's so appealing. Yeah. But when it's a woman, it's like, oh, I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah. And then it's like, okay, then your mind wanders, you know, like the fear leads to this like insecurity, comparison, like all the things. But I'm like, okay, so does that mean I have to marry someone in ministry as well? Like, what does that look like? You know, I just go like forever and ever. And so, I don't know. I feel like just reminding, I don't know. I think this is a thing, whether you're in ministry or not, like ministry aside.
Yeah, I think that it's like I'm going to say that as well. Ministry aside, a bold, strong woman can be a little bit intimidating to some men. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that sometimes that can be intimidating because that man has not yet fully embrace his identity as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if men are going to be okay in their masculinity, there has to be some sort of maturity in there that will say like, I don't have to be the man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like that, and I'm going to say in our culture, that is so, it's rare because, and we're seeing it now. Like we are working through masculinity and femininity and all of the things in between.
Yeah.
And it's pretty confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like in our cultural moment that problem mixed with like, just because we hear women speak about it doesn't mean that men are on the same, on the opposite end of the spectrum with the same ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even like, oh my gosh, there's no way that I'll be able to measure up to what any woman needs as a husband. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. I was talking to Janice the other day actually about the fine line of like living in this place of desiring, but also like not living in the place of only desiring, but not living in the place of only doubting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like this balance act that we have as women and single women, but all women as well. Like, how do you fully believe that God has something good for you and that is in the plan, but also trust that it's okay if it's not?
Yeah.
You know, it's like you're okay with either way. And sometimes you live on the side of like obsessing over it.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you live on the side of like I said the other day when I turned away completely and was like, yeah, I don't want that. So it's a balancing act, I feel like, which leads to the fear, the control, XYZ. So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I feel like there are a lot of women in culture right now that are dealing, especially Christian culture. It's like singleness is like the buzzword, right? Which I'm like, I can't believe I'm even bringing it up, but it's huge. It's a huge thing. And I feel like you said, it's stunting our growth if we're living in a place of not embracing who we are and not embracing the season that we're in. And I've seen that time and time again in my own life as well.
Well, and it feels like, I feel like even with fear and like having a strong personality has, in the reason that like we're talking about any of this is because it has so much to do with our identity. Because what happens is it hits every single area of our life, and we don't always recognize it. And if we're not careful to like the second half of the thing of like and what we're doing about it, if we're not careful in how we address the second part of that phrase, it can infiltrate and find its way into so much of our identity. And what we can do is we can find ourselves sitting in a bed of fear and not living into the strong person that God has made us to be. And I'm not talking about like personality. I'm talking about the way that God has designed and created the gifts and the talents that he's given us. And we can sit in fear and not use any of it.
Yeah.
And
It's
not
so
move
true.
forward.
It's like it creates complacency.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. In every way.
Yeah. And as I was thinking through like my current fear and what I'm doing about it, my current fear, and I was trying to think back of like, because I do have a lot of fears, just like all of us.
Yeah.
But I was trying to think back even like 3 years ago, leading up to now. And I was trying to ask myself, what are the common themes that I've seen over the last couple years and things that I'm dealing with that have the crux of fear attached to it.
Yeah.
And as I was thinking about it, and I'm like, I feel like it's like so sappy and vulnerable to say, but I feel like my greatest fear is the fear of rejection.
Yeah.
And what happens is if I hold on to that fear too tightly, it causes me to shape and be a chameleon with my identity in every area of my life. And then what I find is years down the road, if I'm crippled by the fear of rejection, then I'm not going to really know who I am in the end.
Yeah.
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 And so I feel like there's this it's kind of has these like double roads, and I can go down the fear of rejection and do everything in my power to not be rejected.
Right.
But when I do that, I'm not going to be who I'm designed to be.
Right.
But if I go down the path of just saying like, well, whatever, I don't care what you think, then I'm afraid that I'm going to find myself being canceled by everybody
Yeah.
and just be this like lonely person.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I get trapped with fear at both ends. But what I found is that when I'm actually embracing who I am and using my gifts and my talents the best way that I know how, and the way that I feel like God's calling me to do in this moment, is I find that no matter where I end up, I will always be rejected in some way.
Yeah.
And especially within our culture today, oh my gosh, the cancel culture. I mean, like,
Yeah.
you can literally say one thing on the internet and people
Yeah.
unfollow you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not that that's bad, but it just, I think that's what feeds into my fear of rejection,
Yeah.
because like I can say one thing and one person might perceive it one way and another person might perceive it another way. And then like they've just X'd me out as a friend.
Yeah.
and
That's what I was
totally
going to
cut me
say.
off.
I feel like it's friendships too. It's like you say one thing and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not talking to them.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm done. And it's like, you didn't even mean to say it. You probably didn't even realize you said it. But that's such a real thing.
Everything is like polarizing. Every
So polarizing.
opinion that you
Yeah.
have is polarizing,
Yeah.
and it is, oh, you think that I'm unfollowing you.
Yeah.
I don't care
Done.
about anything else that you have to say.
Yeah.
And I mean, especially when people say things that do infuriate you, it's like you have to just remember that that's not who they are, but it's
Yeah.
just an opinion that they have, and you can't cancel somebody out because they have one different
Yeah.
opinion
Yeah.
than you.
And what I have found, because I think that half the battle is being aware
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
what is your fear.
Yeah.
And so as I've kind of thought through, like, if my biggest fear is rejection, I kind of had to rewind and think like, well, if my fear is rejection, and if I go to a platform like social media and I'm just going to be me,
Yep.
I will be rejected. And so
Right.
for me, I'm like, maybe the wisest thing is to take a step back and not be on social media for a while. And I did that like 2 years ago, and it was so great. It was like one of the best things I've ever done, because as I pulled back, the noise, it got quieter in my
Yeah.
head, because what
Yeah.
would happen is I would, just be me, just be my real me.
Yeah.
And in like, not that I would get flack for it, but I was just afraid of looking like this person or looking like this person, or someone seeing that and being judgmental. Like that shows you how deep my fear is that
Yeah.
I'm even afraid of like what people think.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
didn't want to live there anymore.
Yeah.
And I wanted, like, more than anything, I can think like 3 years ago, more than anything, I wanted to be like, I want my present self to just be free
Yeah.
and just who I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't know how to get there.
Yeah.
But one way that I started that process was by stepping back and just being with the people that were in front of me.
Yeah.
Instead of like being
good.
in front of like a whole audience digitally, I resolved to the fact that maybe I can start building that interior strong part of me. Maybe I can identify myself as more clear and, I don't know, more stable if I don't have that noise in the voice of all the
Yeah.
social media ruckus or whatever.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
what I found was, as I stepped back, I started building around me and just the relationships that were right in front of me, because
Yeah.
those people don't reject me like the people online do.
Yeah.
And what I found was, when I decided to do that, it was like I allowed God to speak into parts of my life to start creating that identity. And now I have found myself in a space where I was fearful of like, well, I just am going to be me and I want to be free with being me. And I don't have like I don't care if I tick you off. It's not
Yeah.
that. It's just like, if you don't, I mean, if I am not what you want to see in a human, then you
Yeah.
can walk along.
Yeah.
And it's not
Yeah.
being mean.
No.
And
No.
it's not, it's just like, I don't live life for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's so, people pleasing is such
my
a
gosh.
dangerous place.
And it wears me out.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
I will walk away from a conversation and be like, oh my gosh, why did I say that? What?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what they think about this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And think about it for like hours.
Yes.
Yes.
It's all out of fear of rejection, literally. And
Yeah.
it starts by, removing the noise. That's so good. I feel like that's really with any fear. Like removing the noise is helpful. Like because of the comparison that we feel, especially with social media. I know that's like, we talk about it all the time, but it's so true. Like just taking some time off.
Well, we're trying to gain, like with social media, we end up trying to gain the approval of everybody else digitally, and we lose sight and we lose track of gaining the approval of who's really important.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like my inner circle, my husband, my kids, my close friends. And not that here's the thing is I don't really have to gain approval from them.
Yeah.
I already have it.
Right.
Yeah.
But I get so, like, we can get so lost and off track because we're striving for the approval of everybody online that we know nothing about, that we start to lose sight of what's really important, and that is usually the people that are right in front of us.
Yeah.
Right.
It's so true. Crazy.
But what do you, I mean, like, so you said it really goes beyond like the fear of rejection.
Yeah.
So if we were to like go on to the second half of the phrase, my current fear is, and here's what I'm doing about it.
Yeah.
What are you doing about being a strong woman?
Yeah. I feel like I've been on a journey of embracing who I am.
I love that journey for you.
Yeah, love that for you. No, but really, like, what are the things I've had to sit with God and ask, like, okay, what are the things that you have put in me? What are the ways that you've created me that I should be embracing? And like letting him speak into those things and letting him remind me that he did make me that way for a reason.
Yeah.
And that it is going to be for a good reason. Beyond just ministry, beyond just what I do for work. I'm an Enneagram 3, not to bring the Enneagram in, but obviously
I didn't know that.
I am.
Oh.
Yep. So obviously I like think about work a lot and achieving and all the things, but I feel like that's honestly been the biggest thing is like, okay, God, who do you say I am? And just one of the best things a friend ever encouraged me to do one time when I was struggling with this really bad it was a few years ago. Clearly it's a cycle. She said, I think you should take like an hour every single morning and ask God to tell you one thing that he loves about you.
Dang, that's a long time.
Yeah. I know. Well, and it's like,
yeah,
I'm like,
I was also tired for 3 months of my life.
yeah, but I also was like in college, so I had
Okay,
the
there
time
you
to be
go.
like spending an hour asking him. But it like seriously kind of shaped the way that I viewed myself in like, okay, he said that I am this and he made me this way. And so in the moments where I feel like, oh, is that too much? Was that like too off-putting? I can be reminded like, no, God said that's who I am. And he created me that way for that reason. So as cliche as it sounds, like asking, what are the ways?
So like, let me ask you the practicality in
Yeah.
that, because like, I'm interested from your perspective, what that looks like to like sit.
Yeah.
Because if you've ever heard of a spiritual discipline, if you haven't looked them up, they're amazing. They're life-changing. There's great books. Richard Foster maybe wrote a book called The Celebration of Discipline, and it talks about a lot of different spiritual disciplines. And one of them is silence and solitude. And so explain what that kind of looks like over the course of like you. I mean, does it literally look like I'm going to sit and just, God, tell me something?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's different for me in different seasons. In this season right now, it's literally going on a walk. I think there's so much power in leaving your phone at home.
Yes.
Leaving your AirPods at home and seriously just walking with God, like in silence. You look kind of crazy if you are like talking out loud, but it's fine.
Praying out loud.
Yeah, it's totally fine. But seriously, I feel like right now it's like I go and spend alone time just outside. And seriously asking him, like straight up with my words out loud, God, I'm struggling with this. And that's the other thing, being honest. Like, I feel like that's what shaped it all for me is like telling him my fear. I think we have this like weird mentality of, Pastor Steve just preached about it a few weeks ago, but that we can't ask the questions or we can't be honest. Yeah. It's like, no, God,
it's
I'm
okay
like,
to ask why.
Yeah.
It's okay to be honest.
Yes. Like, God, I'm fearful that because of the way that I am created, that this is not going to be a thing for me, that I'm not going to have a spouse. Starting with that, like being honest, and then asking him to speak into it. And, you know, I know people hear from God differently. I hear his voice audibly sometimes, which I know freaks people out sometimes if they don't. People, you know, hear his voice through other people. So I think it's more so a heart posture of allowing him to speak into it. I think that's where the wall gets put up, is like sometimes we don't want to hear what he has to say. So just allowing yourself.
I feel like there's been times in my life where I've done the first part. I'm like, I'm honest with you, God. I'm like, sorry about this. And I feel like this, and I'm doing this, but like, show me something. And then I'll just like turn my ears off. Like I did the first part. I was honest with you, but I don't really want to hear what you have to say.
Well, because for me, I'm scared that he's going to be like, well, are you going to be okay if you are alone forever? And I'm like, oh, I don't want to hear that. Like, you're supposed to say something else. But I really feel like, to your point of quieting the noise, that's how I quiet the noise, is like literally leave my phone, leave my AirPods, and just go on a walk. For some people, it's journaling. For some people, it's taking a drive. I know in seasons, that's been my thing. Not right now, obviously. Gas is a little expensive. But like taking a drive and just being quiet. I think our culture right now, we aren't quiet very often. And he speaks to us in the still, small moments.
And I feel like there was a time within this like fear of rejection thing. 2020 really helped with the quietness aspect for me. Well, in some senses of the word, because then I had all 3 kids home all the time. And then we homeschooled, and there was never a quiet time in my house. But I did like during those months and year, I made it a priority to get up in the quietness before everybody. And I am going to make a disclaimer right now, is like, that didn't happen until my kids were a lot older. Because I feel like so many times when my kids were your kids' age, I would beat myself up because I wouldn't wake up early, and I wanted to. I had the desire, like, I'm going to get up early, I'm going to read, do a devotional of some sort or whatever, because I feel like I cannot even catch my breath when my kids are awake. But it was years later before I actually could find the discipline and the strength, because I was so stinking tired of answering the calls in the middle of the night and doing all the feeding and the diapering and all that. But I did find like a quiet space, and it was in that time that I started asking God, what does it look like to be me? And how do you see me? And I feel like God just like, it's almost like what I would describe, because you say like how God speaks to us. I feel like that's going to be a topic of discussion until we're dead and we actually meet him face to face, and we can like really hear him and see his lips move and all that. But I feel like it was like almost in my chest that it was just like, you are enough because I say you are. And I just remember that, and I wrote it down, and I just could not. I mean, like, it's almost like just like I was just brought to tears, because I'm like, I know that came from the Lord. It came from my inner voice. But I really believe that was the Holy Spirit saying, I've made you enough already. You don't have to be enough to everybody around you. So it's funny when you ask the question, like, I'm too much, I feel like I'm on the other end of the spectrum, like, am I even enough for people, you know? And so I really feel like at that one point, it was like, God was like, you're enough already. You don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to worry about being rejected by anybody, because you're never going to be rejected by me. And so I feel like what you're saying, like with the solitude and the asking and the just being willing to hear the answer, a lot of times God will surprise us, because here's what I have to say about also with like singleness. If God were to call you to singleness for the rest of your life, sure, like you might have times when you'd be like, really? But in the moment that he would reveal that to you, it would be such a loving and gentle way. And like you would just be like a calling, and I'm ready for the calling, and I'm excited for what's ahead.
And so much peace with it.
Because I don't think that God ever lays something in front of us and we just feel like regret or we feel
Yeah.
like resentment.
Yeah.
That does never happen with
Yeah.
anybody that I've ever talked to in their encounters with God, is that we'll feel bummed.
Yeah.
If anything, even if it's like a calling of something that we're not really
Yeah.
excited about,
Yeah.
like moving
Yeah.
across the United States,
Right.
I still had this burning of like,
Yes.
but there's so much ahead and it's
Yeah.
an adventure and I'm going to walk it out with Christ and I'm going to learn a lot about myself and all that. So
That's so good.
all that to say that even in our fear and even when like we allow God to speak into our lives, it usually comes with a peace that you
Yeah.
can't explain, which is why the Bible says like a peace that surpasses all understanding,
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
And really, like when you feel that peace, it's like, I know what that means now.
Yeah. That's so good.
What about
So
you,
good.
Maria?
I'm dealing with a little segue, I guess, but I think you guys kind of talked about it too, but I think a big part of just the fears that I'm dealing with my kids and their future and all that stuff, so much of it is me and my identity and how I can respond to my kids. And because one thing that's inevitable is our kids are going to walk through hard times.
Yeah.
Our kids are going to be,
They're going to do things outside of our control.
yes, very much so. And they're going to come to their mom and say, you know, Mom, I screwed up, or Mom, this bad thing happened to me. And I know that it is my job as their mom to be that strong sounding board for them. And I can't do that if I'm sitting around worrying about myself, crying on my own shoulder, you know? And so I have found in this season that, and I'm kind of on the other end of like, this is not a season that I wanted to be in. This is not something
Right.
that
Like
I
you did
wanted.
not handpick this for
No.
yourself.
And this is not something that I felt like I was, you know, I don't feel like this is the calling of my life to be in this situation. But I do feel like I have worked, like God has worked so much in me in this season of singleness of, okay, what are some things that I need to work on? And one
Yeah.
thing was I knew I needed to exercise more. So I've worked out more than I ever have in my life. I'm eating better. I'm healthier than I've ever felt. But then so much of it is mental. So it's
Yes.
things like getting more in the word, and it's surrounding myself. I've had more time to really devote to my friendships than I've
Yeah.
ever had, because when you have toddlers, you don't have any time for anything
No.
ever.
Yeah.
And so I've had to kind of rework everything that I've known up until this point.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I would beat myself up that I couldn't get up early. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm really good at staying up late.
I'm really good at
So
being a night owl.
yeah. So I put my kids to bed and I made their bedtime more strict. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to stay up until 11 o'clock. They go to bed by 8:30. I've got until 11 o'clock to do whatever I want. And so that means I work out, I spend time doing my devotionals and spending time in prayer, and I have a lot more time.
Yeah.
And then if I'm in bed and I sleep by 11, I've got plenty of sleep. They wake up at 7.
Yeah.
So it's
Well, you
kind of,
prioritized.
yes,
Right.
I have restructured, and I'm like, I have never felt better. And I'm not in a season that I wanted to be in, or that I
Yeah.
felt like, but there is that peace
Yeah.
Yeah.
from God. And I'm like, oh, I could either sit around and say, I'm so sad, and wallow, and, you know, or I can say, I have some time that I can really focus on myself and
Yeah.
really get myself to where I can be a super strong mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like God has spoken to me more in the last year than he
good.
has in
That's
my
so good.
entire life.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm reading scripture and it's like he's holding up a sign that says this is for you.
Yeah.
And I just, like we were talking before, it was just, I feel like those letters, I would advise any single mom to read through all the letters of the New Testament, because it is the apostles saying to people that they are not with, whether it's Timothy, whether it's the Corinthians or whoever, hey, I'm not with you right now, but this is what I'm praying over you.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
what
So
I
good.
want for you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this is exactly what
Yeah.
what I need in this season.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of like, yes, I wish that, my kids don't understand this stuff right now, but I'm going to pray this over their lives, and
Yeah.
I'm going to be, at times it's like, okay, I've got to have peace from afar, and I've got to be wise from afar, and I've got to do what's best for them and take all those steps. So it's not easy, and there are hard moments, but I feel
Yeah.
like I've been in a better place than I've ever been in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
it's
so good.
it looks so different than what
Yeah.
when I was 20, what I imagined 30 to look like.
Yeah.
It looks completely
Oh, yeah.
different.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of times I'm pinching myself. I'm like, I can't believe this is my life because I love it.
Yeah.
And that's
wow.
asking a year ago, that is not what I thought I'd be saying right
Yeah.
now. But
Yeah.
but it is because I have had to put in a lot of really hard work to get
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's one thing I think Joyce Meyer said, you know, you look at the people you aspire to be, and that whether it's a spiritual leader or whatever, and they didn't get there by sitting around wishing.
Yeah, you're right.
They get there by putting in the work. And so,
Yeah. And like, and just to affirm you and you for doing that work, because I think sometimes it's easy to kind of get on the hamster wheel of like, there's some that's faith and trust and some that's like doing, like we just get on this balancing act between works and faith and trust and works and all this. And I think that, like you said, nothing, it goes hand in hand. I think so many times like we want to put it in these separate categories, but I think what has to be there first is the desire.
Yeah.
And then as we go and as we move through our lives, we learn that they go hand in hand because I have the desire and the drive and the circumstance to get there. Because sometimes God uses the most unlikely of circumstances to get our attention.
Yeah.
And when he gets our attention and when we wake up to his call to say move forward and put one foot in front of the other, it looks different for everybody else, but what is there is the desire to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that God gives us that desire, and like because fear can be so paralyzing.
yeah.
And I know that like in Pastor Tim's book Scary Faith, he talks about the fight or flight, and he added in like the freeze. So we can like in the face of fear, we can fight against it. We can like flight and just totally escape mentally and physically and other ways, or we can just freeze. And that so often happens to me is that in my fear I just freeze and I'm like, I can't do anything. Like, but I feel like when we, like you said, like when we open ourselves up to God's direction and surrendering our fears to him and saying like, this is not what I envisioned, or this is not like I want to be in a certain space or a certain stage of my life. It's not what I had planned, but I acknowledge that your plans are better for me. And so like you have something to teach me right now. What is it? And we open up that conversation to God, and he pours so much into it. And he might not immediately on the first time that you ask, but you keep knocking on that door because ask, seek, and knock, and he will answer.
Yeah, it's so true. I feel like I wanted to say that too. It's not the first time that I ask him that he always says the things that I need him to say, but it's the consistency, I think, is what has helped me the most. Like consistency in prayer, like you said, Maria, consistency in reading the Bible, consistency in talking to him, in spending time with people who are wise and, you know, mentoring me through it. That's where I'm seeing things shift.
And that's the work.
Right. That's
because
the work.
It's easy just to ask once and walk away.
Right.
And just be like, all right, well, I asked. So
Right.
And he didn't answer.
Right.
I
But
feel like
the work is when you ask again.
Yes.
And you don't hear anything, and you
And
ask again, and you ask again, and you say, God, I know you're not answering me right now, or you might be answering me, but I'm not seeing it plainly or clearly, so I'm going to ask you to identify that and to develop that in me.
Yeah.
That's the work.
Yeah.
And the work is also being disciplined. And like you said, like you started working out, you've made a decision to pour time into yourself, and then you've prioritized.
Yeah.
That can be so
That's
hard.
huge.
Yeah.
And, but we'll really do whatever's really important to us.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when we start prioritizing healthy things, whether that's filling your body with good food, giving your body exercise, there's numerous side effects that come with that, and they are also all good.
Yeah.
Because I notice, like with my body, like when I'm eating healthy and exercising, my mental clarity is something else. Like it's like next level.
Yeah.
And I notice that like when I'm eating poor, I mean, like not to say that there's just like there's seasons like vacations and times and everything, like you just go back to like the unhealthy eating and like no working out or whatever. But then like once I start again, I'm like, why don't I always do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because and also like Trey, my husband, always says that when he works out and he exercises, it also helps him establish a routine
Yeah.
to where if he exercises, he's also reading the Bible.
Yeah.
Because like he's got to like set a chunk of time aside to work out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that also means that I'm going to be disciplined enough to set a chunk of time aside to read the word. And
Yeah.
so what I find is like so many times when we implement and prioritize these really good things in our life, so many other things follow them
Yeah.
that we're unaware of.
Yeah.
I think me being the healthiest version of myself and spending that time. I mean, I'm by myself during that time, but it has helped me to shift my focus to think about my friends and pour into those relationships and set aside time for that.
Yeah.
That's something I feel like, especially as moms, you think, I don't have time for friends. I don't have time
Yeah.
for that or whatever. I don't have money. But I'm like, you do. When you shift your priority and I'm able to surround myself with good people that can
Yeah.
be that sounding board for me, it's like everything changes. And it's
Yeah,
all that.
that's so good.
It's when you devote your time to God, he's like, okay, let me help you here and let me help you here and let me help you here. And, but yeah, it's all important. And I didn't realize how much I was neglecting myself, especially as a young mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you do. You
I
neglect
know.
yourself. And it sounds so easy to just, oh yeah, just, stay up later and do this and that. Yeah. And like, yeah, that sounds impossible when you have a newborn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as time goes on, it's like, okay, I need to devote some time to myself. And that is with God.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So good.
Shoot.
I said it wasn't going to be a therapy session, but
But maybe it was.
no. So I hope that you gained a lot of insight from this podcast, and I want to thank Maria and Hope for being on here. We want you to write in with any questions you have or any topics that you want us to discuss. Email inspired@thex.church.
Yep.
At thex.church. Feel free to like drop any topics that you want to hear on the Inspired podcast, but you need to join us back next week because like I said, this is going to be a part of a bigger series, and next week I'm going to have 2 other guests that I'm really excited to dive into another topic of what we're going to be talking about for a few weeks. See ya next week.
Thanks so much for listening. Our hope is that everyone who hears these episodes, near or far, would know that the invitation at our table is always open. You might not be sitting at this table, but our desire is that you would join in on these conversations. So if you were inspired by today's talks, send us an email at inspired@thex.church. We'd love to hear your thoughts, stories, and questions. And as always, don't forget to rate and review wherever you listen to podcasts.